Well, many thanks for staying with us. We're heading straight to our first conversation of the day, and we have with us in the studio Mr. Chibuzor Okereke, who is a policy analyst, joining us on the program this morning to discuss and look at the proposed strike that is now suspended by the NLC over the 50% tariff increase by telcos. Many thanks for joining us on the program.
Thank you. Good morning.
It's a pleasure to have you again. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Do you want to walk us through, the situations around this tariff increase, this 50% tariff increase by telcos, the proposed strike, just around this issue?
Well, I think the issue is that citizens are overburdened. You can see we have the tax reform bill that is ongoing, that is also targeted at increasing VAT. We also have the electricity tariff that have just been increased and then segmented into band A, band B, and people are also worried because certain places, because it was done by geographical location, and people are saying there are people within the zones we have classified as C and D that are actually supposed to be in A because of their consumption, and government is losing money. Now, over time, you see that the issue of telecom has become the means of livelihood of many people. People largely depend on communications technology for their business, for communications, for virtually everything you do is tied to communications and technology, and therefore it is one sector after the liberalization in the early 2000s that has grown over time. So today we have high dependency ratio of people depending on it, and the poverty level of the people have not also changed. So the increase in tariff, that was why it generated this amount of issue. And you ask yourself, why now? Why everything? People have argued on one end that globally, because of economic situation and the essential nature of these services, that they need to improve the tariff rate so that they can be able to stay in business, because according to them, logistics and running costs have also increased exponentially. However, the economic well-being of the average people is not also there. So maybe where we actually need to bandwidth people into band A, B, and C. Because you see, you pay the same data rate with somebody who is in the village, who does not even have the same level of living standard and economic opportunity with you. You pay the same as an individual, even maybe with companies and what have you. So it's a big challenge. However, it's good that the NLC, no matter what problem you face in a nation state, discussions and negotiation is the order of the day. The only challenge is that in this engagement, you have to also look at other alternatives. In policy design, it's not just straight-jacketed. NLC may not even effectively negotiate for millions of people across the country. But it is good that they are putting out themselves, because their workers are involved to engage and negotiate. And the best approach remains incremental basis, so that the people are not overwhelmed and overburdened. Because if you do, somehow it's going to affect your turnover, and people will begin to look for alternatives. Look at the issue of electricity. Today, while we are trying to, energize the market and bring about improved liquidity for the market, a lot of the big customers are already leaving that stream. It's now an alternative. They are investing heavily in alternative energy, and government will be losing money, because if the companies do not get money, they will not pay the necessary tax, because people have alternative. If you have alternative, then the rate of funding for that particular electricity on the grid or off grid will be low. If you have invested in solar energy, you won't. So the same. So they have to be careful how they overburden people with tariff, because it can actually engender innovation that to eventually impart on already made investment in that sector. Yeah.
But you know, these telecommunications, they've aired their concerns as to cost of running these telecommunications, how we have increase in most of our essentials, food items, logistics, and all of those. These people are running businesses as well, and they've also, you know, aired concerns around increase in running this business. Isn't it fair to an extent that there should be consideration so that they don't run at a loss? And then when you talk about alternatives, how we have alternatives for energy and other, what are the possible alternatives to, you know, some of these services like the telecom services that we're looking at?
I will start from the second leg of your question. Whenever people are pressured, definitely it will lead to innovation and creativity. And the fortunate thing is that it may not even be Nigerian market dependent. As you see, the so-called alternative energy we are investing in electricity, is going to China and most Western countries where those materials are being imported from. So I think that there should be transparency and accountability. We are running a mixed economic model, largely capitalist in nature. These are private sector companies. However, the evil of capitalism, or the excess of capitalism, is often modulated by the intervention of state, which is why the state are the ones who license you to operate. Because if we allow, remember there was a time in this country, any call you make is 1 minute. It took a lot of fight for them to do per second billing. We are still experiencing that with the DSTV, where, you know, whether you watch it or not, it goes off after 1 month. There was a time in this country where we were even told that the telecom communication gadget is not for everybody, saying we are being sold at 50,000. Over time, competition made it possible for people. Today, we are not even talking about calls and tests. There is a heavy inflow of liquidity through data. People use data even more than they make calls, because people now communicate through visuals. And this is where the problem lies: transparency and accountability in the billing system. I can bet that most Nigerians do not even understand about the billing system. In fact, while we are discussing this, if there is no sufficient transparency, you may have been experiencing incremental billing. You have heard people complain about poor services, and yet their data has gone, nobody restored it. Their core credit unit is also, you are making call, you can't even understand the person. So I understand from the private sector point of view, the idea that there is general rise in the cost of logistics and operation. But how do we work out the details to determine what should be the necessary increase, that you are not just responding to maybe the usual bogus profit margin you are used to? You have to also recognize that it's the general low economic condition, and that people do not have access to the kind of economic fortunes they are used to. In that regard, you will not just wake up and say your tariff is to be increased by 100%. And it was 100% earlier.
Yeah.
Now they went into discussion with the regulator, who I don't know if they even had any consultation, approved 50%. Imagine, and this is also about how we make policy and how we value citizens' engagement.
So can we blame this on regulation now? Of regulation.
Absolutely, because you see, regulators may have thought that they have absolute powers. However, they are not the final consumer. They are part of the final consumer, but they are not. So they cannot stay in their high office and make a determination as what it should be. And I think that those who probably utilize the services more, have access to more economic opportunity, can be paid more. These things can actually be, you know, modeled that way. And then the opportunity also, like we are talking about in electricity, to give people access to units as a form of subsidy, rather than paying the subsidy without it getting to the people. You have to also look at it, the value chain, how many people that may be affected, because you are not going to be there in the streets, on the streets, to implement the multiplier effect. Once a service provider in a local area heard that, oh, remember the POS system, the moment they couldn't access cash, and we are still heavily cash dominated economy, on their own they increase the charges to people, and that is a burden that you cannot even explain, because it's happening within an informal sector where nobody, is only if you experience it you will know that a POS person on the street is simply telling you. Remember that also those POS, because they are working promptly and instantly, is because they depend on internet. They are not like the old POS, so they will be paying more on data now. So it's not just about you as an individual making call. In running your office, you need internet to power a lot of things. You will be paying more. That also adds to your own cost of doing business, which will eventually be passed to the consumer. So that discussion that should engage the people more, and incremental approach for me is the best. Nothing stops you from doing something in 6 months, 1 year, in the next 2 years. Have a model that businesses and individuals can use to plan.
So with all of these that you have highlighted now, what specific role should the NCC and Consumer Protection Commission be playing at this point in time?
First, they need to, people are not even aware of the actual billing system. Yes, things whether the consumer protection people, I don't think they even have the right technology to do audit trail on the telecom companies. Don't forget there was a time we said MTN was owing Nigeria about 500 million or so as a fine for some level of infractions and what have you. Today, we still face the same challenge. So what should we expect from regulators? One, acquire the necessary capacity, latest technology to be able to regulate that sector promptly. Because it's important that you're able to audit them, promptly, and you're able to also apply necessary penalties to offenders. Then the consumer protection tool must do more with awareness creation and sensitization of people to understand. The telecom people are doing their part, maybe telling you, oh, this is our data rate, billing system, oh, participate in this service, you get this. And the sector too, apart from the literate and educated people, for most of our people who are using these services, they don't even know how to easily resolve complaints. If you watch the model of office management for the most of the telecoms, they have no offices or complaint commission or service complaint agent where people can even talk to. Because some of the people using them cannot even dial anything on their own without the help of somebody. So if something happens, they have no means to even know. It may interest you to know that in the village, oh, network is bad. Oh, it's network. Oh, let me cut it. This is what I mean. In December, in most of us who travel to our village, we experience a lot of challenges with communication. And on each occasion, your data is going. At the end of the month, they say, oh, it can't work again. You need to roll it over. But all those times the services failed. You were not able to gain back, and you may have lost opportunity. There are even things because of failure of service that you may not quantify in terms of money. And therefore, the Consumer Protection Commission and the NCC as the lead regulator must play a key role in getting people to understand the sector better, getting them to understand how to also make complaints, getting them to understand their rights and privileges and even obligations. Because that knowledge is critical for the people to benefit from whatever service they're providing. Yeah.
But let's look at the business climate, particularly in Nigeria, and then telcos. Has this climate been fair to, telecom providers in Nigeria?
Well, I can tell you that we don't participate in their audit process. They've been the one publishing their annual account and announcing humongous, profits. In fact, their account, right now, significantly they contribute to the country's GDP more in the non-oil sector. Digital economy is leading the path, and telecom contribute the most in that trade. So I wouldn't say I don't think that apart from issues of vandalism, insecurity, and the failure of the state to provide access to electricity and power, because I see that most of their communication facilities, they have to put power in 24 hours to be able to serve people, and they have to put security men there. They practically live in those facilities to be able to protect it from vandalism and what have you. And these are the areas I think the state can do more. If a company is doing well, paying taxes, has employed your citizens in the hundreds of thousands of them, and created other value chain retail jobs, then you need to also fulfill your part. You can't have them to continue using diesel. Now, diesel is very high, so it adds to their own cost. Outside the volatility in the dollar, because most of the equipment are also imported. And then insecurity that has affected, as I think sometime last year, large-scale vandalization of the communication equipment. These are the problems that I know is not the responsibility of ordinary citizens, but the government, of the day at every point in time. When you liberalize the sector, if you allow it to run, in the manner we are now experiencing, with the people almost independent of providing everything for themselves, except for the fact that there is a huge market in Nigeria they are tapping into. I think that aspect is also unfair. But having said that, the fact and data available support that irrespective of these challenges they face, they continue to post huge profits, because Nigeria is a veritable market for them. And I think as at recent report, we have over 120 million or thereabouts who are subscribers to these telecom companies, and many more are even coming up. So, yeah.
All right, we'll take a quick break now. We have been speaking with Ambassador Chibuzor Okereke, who is a public policy analyst, taking us on his perspective and contributions as to the proposed strike on the increase of telecom tariff, 50% tariff. We'll take a quick break. The program continues shortly. Many thanks for staying with us. We still have Ambassador Chibuzor Okereke in the studio. Okay, sir. When we saw in the papers there was supposed to be a proposed strike this morning by the NLC over this tariff hike that is now even 50%. But we saw in the papers that the federal government has set up a committee to negotiate and ensure that these issues are properly taken care of through dialogue. Do you think that a strike would have, better, would have yielded better results, or what do you think would be the outcome of this negotiation?
Well, I don't think that strike is actually the last option. First, in the 3 C's of engagement, you understand, you have consultation, you have consolidation of the outcome of that consultation. Before, in quote, you have confrontation, which is like the strike tool, and the more other levels of engagement has also been included. At the end of the day, this is how state apparatus works. the labor and other pressure group people, they will engage the government on the issue. So I'm happy that they have suspended the strike, because even in large-scale wars, it will still end at the table for you to find a peace. Labour had maintained that it would prefer 10% increase at the time. The regulator had approved 50%, which is where I believe we had the gap. We should have done engagement with critical stakeholders so that it will even be a collective decision to make an announcement that this is what the groups and the different stakeholders have agreed. It may not be totally what the telecom companies want at the time, but it's a way forward. So it's good that the federal government knows the implication. The strike will cost more than what we are talking about, because a lot of essential economic and social services will be shut down when the labor is on strike. We have seen that situation in the past. You may not even have light, in your business places. Even the telecom may not work optimally when you go on strike. So this committee should be able to look at it in the reality of economic situation in Nigeria, and not being sentimental or emotional. Reality, data, facts should support. And then what role should government play? Is there need for a model that allows for intervention for the poor, and then those who can afford it, will be able to pay a certain level of tariff increase. Bearing in mind that almost every essential service Nigerians are paying for, we have increased tariff on them, whether it is electricity, whether it's water, even the new wage that have been paid. Most of those things were not even considered at the time the new minimum wage was approved. So if you look at it now, there's now an increase of almost 30% from the original cost used to negotiate the new minimum wage. And this is the challenge that is avoidable. So the government has taken the right step, and we support that strike should be suspended, engagement should move smoothly and fast, and let them come out with a middle ground that allows the telecoms to continue in business and the people not to be overburdened with a lot of taxes and levies.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Chibuzor, for your contribution on this topic of national interest. Well, that's how much we can take on our conversation here. Up next, we'll have Uyi Agbomofoebe take you on our second conversation. Stick around, the program continues.